chapter 11, text 12. Sarvatru Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramaihi Udyanaha Upavanaha Aramai Krita Padmakara Shriyam Sarvatru Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Yano Pavanaramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam Sarvatru Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam Sarvatru Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam
Sarvatu Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam Sarvatu Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam Sarvatu Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Aramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam
Sarvatu Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramai Udyano Pavanaramai Vrita Padmakara Shriyam
Sarva all Ritu seasons Sarva all Vibhava opulences Punya highest Vriksha trees Lata creepers Ashramaihi hermitages Udyana orchards Upavana flower gardens Aramaihi pleasure gardens and beautiful parks Vrita surrounded by Padma Akara the birthplaces of lotuses or nice reservoirs of water. Shriyam, increasing the beauty. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The city of Dwarkapuri was filled with the opulences of all seasons. There were hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water, breeding lotus flowers all over. Translation with repetition. The city of Dwarkapuri was filled with the opulences of all seasons. There were hermitages, orchards, flower gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water, breeding lotus flowers all over. Perfection of human civilization is made possible by utilizing the gifts of nature in their own way. As we find herewith in the description of its opulence, Dwarka was surrounded by flower gardens and fruit orchards, along with reservoirs of water and growing lotuses. There is no mention of mills and factories supported by slaughterhouses, which are the necessary paraphernalia of the modern metropolis. The propensity to utilize nature's own gifts is still there, even in the heart of the modern civilized man. The leaders of modern civilization select their own residential quarters in a place where there are such naturally beautiful gardens and reservoirs of water, but they leave the common men to reside in congested areas without parks and gardens. Herein, of course, we find a different description of the city of Dwarka. It is understood that the whole dhama, or residential quarter, was surrounded by such gardens and parks with reservoirs of water, where lotuses grew. It is understood that all the people depended on nature's gifts of fruits and flowers, without industrial enterprises promoting filthy huts and slums for residential quarters. Advancement of civilization is estimated not on the growth of mills and factories to deteriorate the finer instincts of the human being, but on developing the potent spiritual instincts of human beings and giving them a chance to go back to Godhead. Development of factories and mills is called ugra karma, or pungent activities, and such activities deteriorate the finer sentiments of the human being and society to form a dungeon of demons. We find herein the mention of pious trees which produce seasonal flowers and fruits. The impious trees are useless jungles only, and they can only be used to supply fuels. In the modern civilization, such impious trees are planted on the sides of roads. Human energy should be properly utilized in developing the finer senses for spiritual understanding, in which lies the solution of life. Fruits, flowers, beautiful gardens, parks, and reservoirs of water, with ducks and swans playing in the midst of lotus flowers and cows giving sufficient milk and butter, are essential for developing the finer tissues of the human body. Against this, the dungeons of mines, factories, and workshops develop demoniac propensities in the working class. The vested interests flourish at the cost of the working class, and consequently, there are severe clashes between them in so many ways. The description of Dwarka Dham is the ideal of human civilization. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Today's verse is such a wonderful example of the extraordinary thought and writing of Srila Prabhupada, that just the first line of the purport alone contains within it several works of many scientists who have won Nobel Prizes. Just the first sentence. We will see some of that, but let us just look at the verse one more time. Sarvartu sarva, sarva ritu Sarva Vibhava Punya Vriksha Latashramaihi Udyana Upavana Aramair Vrita Padmakara Shriyam. The city of Dwarkapuri was filled with opulences of all seasons. Opulences is Vibhava. And seasons is Ritu. Sarva Ritu, all the seasons. And Punya Vriksha Lata Shramaihi. That is Punya Vriksha, pious trees. We all heard of pious people. Here there is mention of pious trees. And Prabhupada is explaining in the purport what is meant by pious trees. Pious trees are those that bear flowers and fruits. Useful trees. Trees that are useful to people. And impious trees. What are impious trees? Trees that are barren. They don't have any useful flowers or fruits. And it is just used for some firewood. That is the only use of it. The actual tree itself, there is no fragrance, no flowers, and no edible fruits. No edible fruits. Fruits here means edible fruits. That is what makes it pious. A pious tree is one which has edible fruits. Punya Vriksha Latashramaihi. Lata are creepers, nice, beautiful creepers. Because when the trees, there are creepers that grow on the trees, they look even more beautiful. And creepers often have fragrant flowers, like the jasmine. Jasmine is a creeper. It grows as a creeper very nicely and has very fragrant flowers. Lata Ashramaihi, with hermitages. And you see this word hermitages. What is the image that comes up when we think of hermitages? A hermitage, like a hut. Hermitage, immediately you think of hut, right? Thatched roof, very simple straw. But then Prabhupada in the purport says, they are filled with hermitages, not like the modern metropolis which is full of huts and slums. Right? In the purport, Prabhupada says that. So he draws a distinction between a hut and a hermitage. Ashramaihi. Ashrama. The difference between hut and hermitage. What is it? They look similar, a hut and a hermitage, but there is a very big difference. A hermitage is a simple dwelling. It may be made of thatched roof, not that it is made of some hollow block concrete or anything like that. It need not be, or metal roofing, last for a lifetime, nothing like that. It can be made of simple thatched roof, similar to what they call hut. But the difference is the person is living there with a desire to live a simple life with Krishna at the center of his life. That is the difference between a hermitage, ashrama. Ashrama means taking shelter of. So a hermitage is a simple dwelling where the dweller has taken shelter of the Lord and making the Lord the center of their life. Whereas a hut in the modern cities, the metropolis, where you have slums, they are living there out of compulsion. It is not that they want to live in that kind of dwelling. They want to live there in compulsion. And they are filthy surroundings, and they have no power to change it. Whereas an ashrama is very clean. A hermitage is very, very clean. If anyone has been to, how many of you have been to Navadvip? Navadvip? Anyone? Navadvip. You will see Navadvip. When you go to Navadvip, hopefully one of these years, our Sri Radha Damodar Mandir may, with the blessings of Srila Prabhupada and our temple president, organize a trip to Navadvip. It is a place like no other. And the islands surrounding Mayapur, they are very, very clean, and each house looks like a hermitage. Every dwelling looks so beautiful and clean, and you would be surprised how in modern day society such clean houses, they are possible, and that in the holy dham of Navadvip, such houses can be found even today. Udyana Upavana Aramair. Udyana are pleasure gardens and beautiful parks. It is not that in the city of Dwaraka that they did not have enjoyment. There were facility for enjoyment. How was the facility of enjoyment? It is nature's gifts. Nature is automatically growing plants. These gardens, pleasure gardens and beautiful parks. Not that there are some arcades, pleasure. Even modern day man has sources of pleasure. What is the modern civilizations? What are the sources of pleasure? Gaming arcades, malls, big malls, which are screaming, buy my product, buy my product. And then you go there, and then it's just surrounded by bright lights and a impulse to obtain things that are really not needed. Or movie theaters, cinema halls, and then restaurants, bars. These are the pleasure places of the modern day civilization. But that is not the case in Dwarka. Dwarka, we have Upavana, Udyana, Upavana, Aramayar, flower gardens. And this whole city is surrounded by such places and surrounded by nice, beautiful ponds, not the reservoirs of water which are constantly being encroached by builders, and these reservoirs are filled. See, there is a strategy. If you see the majority of the world, of course, in some advanced countries, there are some regulations that have come. But by and large, the reservoirs of water, even here, are devoid of any real beautiful flowers or any such thing. Some of it may be attributed to climate, but there is description of beautiful lotus-filled ponds, even in Kailash Dham. When the Prachetas are walking towards the north, they chance upon, by good fortune, by the mercy of Lord Shiva appears there in front of them. But before that, the scenic beauty of the abode of Lord Shiva has been described. And it is described how the ponds are full of lotuses and ducks and swans. So even in cold climate, those flowers can bloom and natural beauty can be experienced. It is possible. But for that, the city has to be administered and the priorities have to be set in a certain way, which unfortunately Srila Prabhupada is pointing out in the purport. That is not the case now. But Dwarakapuri was full of such natural beauty with lotuses and nice reservoirs of water. And the first line in the purport draws this contrast. And if you see this is an AI generated image, you can see. There are a lot of factories supported by slaughterhouses there and huts. And I don't know, I think it's a little dull and gray. It's a little small for you all to see from far. And particularly cows are being taken for slaughter. This is the basic foundation of human civilization. Everything that is available at a discount in America is available at a discount because of cow slaughter. That is what puts everything on sale. A slaughter of cows, the low cost of meat, low cost of milk, everything is subsidizing the livelihoods and the living standards of people in Western countries. And thus the civilization is based upon the slaughter of animals. And that's why Prabhupada is saying that these are factories and mills supported by slaughterhouses. It is not factories and mills surrounded by slaughterhouses. Factories and mills supported by slaughterhouses. Versus the city of Dwarka, surrounded by serene waters, with ducks and swans, lotuses blooming, and trees laden with fruits and flowers. Now there is a similar description and the cause behind this, how there is such wonderful, beautiful scenery and how the flowers are blooming. This is described by Kunti Maharani in her prayers. Ime janapada svraddha supakvaushadhi virudha supakvaushadhi virudha vanadri nadi udanvanto hi edhante tava vikshitaihi. I don't remember who had covered this verse during our COVID times, but we had gone through prayers of Kunti Maharani. And this verse from Kunti Maharani, Ime janapada svraddha supakvaushadhi virudha janadri nadi udvanto hi edhante tava vikshitaihi. So Kunti Maharani is saying that all these beautiful cities and villages, Janapadaha, is referring to cities and villages. It is not that there were only villages at the time. There were cities also. Dwarakapuri was a sprawling city. It was a big city. It was not just villages. But the city had some special qualities. It is when you think of city, what do you think of? Skyscrapers, concrete jungle. This is what you think of. And the urbanization in the world is increasing. Right now it is estimated that the world is 50% urbanized. Just 50 years back, it was probably, you can say, 10% urbanized. But now it is 50% urbanized. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects. And today also, Vibhava, in today's words, Vibhava, opulences, is flourishing. The cities are not, in Dwarakapuri, the city was not under any scarcity. Can we say that today's cities are in abundance? Can we say today's cities have abundance? Even drinking water is in scarcity, even in the developed countries. Even here in Shrewsbury, you can say that drinking water is always a scarcity. It is not in abundance. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. If you don't have grains to produce, there will not be abundance. And to produce grains, we need rainfall, water. All of these are required. Trees are full of fruits, and the rivers are flowing. The hills are full of minerals, the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. So Kunti Maharani is saying that all the abundance and opulence that are there at the time were all because of Lord Krishna's glance. Now you may say, okay, they were very fortunate. Lord Krishna was glancing. What about us? Now, naturally, the world is bereft of all these opulences. Lord Krishna is not glancing. And therefore, trees, you have to fill the agricultural lands with fertilizers and chemicals to even have ordinary grains. Ordinary grains also do not get produced automatically by just putting water. You have to fill it with fertilizers. And what to speak of these trees, even if by chance there are any fruit-bearing trees in a city, the tree is covered with dust. There is no fruit coming. That fruit, we have had in Bangalore, we had an apartment, there were mango trees it was previously a mango orchard. The entire orchard was destroyed to make way for apartments. And 1 or 2 mango trees were allowed to live, just for ambience, so that we may feel good about it. And those mangoes, they used to distribute. In every summer, those mangoes would come and all the apartment owners will get 2 mangoes each. Just from 2 trees, all the people would get the mangoes. But there was one tree in the front of the apartment, which was next to the main road. And then there were 2 trees behind. So the 2 trees which were behind, those mango could be distributed to everyone. But the tree in the front, you could not touch those mangoes. They're covered with dust and pollution and exhaust fumes from the road that made that tree look very dull, and also those fruits cannot be touched by anyone. So the trees, even though today we have the trees, they are faltering in fruit production, and so you have to go to college to study horticulture, how to get this tree to bear fruit. Can you imagine a tree which is naturally supposed to bear fruit? Today, if you want to maximize the production, you have to go to college and study horticulture so that you can maximize production of fruits. And so why is it that we are bereft of Krishna's glance? That is explained in Prabhupada's first sentence itself. The perfection of human civilization is made possible by utilizing the gifts of nature in their own way. In their own way. So nature is giving gifts, and that is intended to be used in a certain way. But we are not using in that way. One big example is corn. America produces a lot of corn. I think Ukraine is considered major, maybe Russia, I don't know. But America produces vast quantities of corn. So what has America done with that corn? Is it used for eating alone? No. What's it used for? Fuel. So it has been mixed with gasoline, with fuel, and used to fuel the cars. And if I'm not mistaken, that is now also being used in India, or no? I don't know. It is there. Ethanol. I mean, ethanol, I'm not sure how it is produced in India, but in America it is produced from corn. So is it an example of using the nature's gifts in its own way? Corn is being given for eating. And on one hand, the population of the world is starving. There is not enough food. And on the other hand, the produce is being used for burning, to be burnt, so that one may get from one place to another. Yes, the person goes to work in a car by burning the food and then earns the money and then cannot afford the food because it is too expensive. It is too expensive because half the food has been burnt. So that is the intelligence of the modern civilization. And Prabhupada is explaining in the purport of this verse, Kunti Maharani's prayer, human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. How do we measure human prosperity today? What is the main yardstick of deciding which is the most advanced nation? GDP. GDP growth. GDP growth is the main yardstick today. And how does GDP grow? How do you increase GDP? By industrialized production and exporting your goods. Maximizing output and exporting your goods. Right? That is how GDP is producing. And it will not be just export, it could be consumption locally, whatever it is. But if, let us say, you have got, let's say you have one cow. The cow gives some milk. And you consume that milk in your family. You have a little extra. Maybe you give it to the caretaker of that cow. Or you give it to somebody in your street. In exchange, they give something extra that they have produced. This is one kind of economy. But if somebody says, no, that cow production was so many gallons per day, 3 gallons per day I was getting milk. Our family consumes something, 1 gallon, 2 gallons are extra. I'm selling it, I'm getting some grains. But now, I want growth. 3 gallons, what will I do with 3 gallons? Next year, I want to see 30% growth. Okay, now you have to produce 3.5 gallons, 30% of mathematicians. Of 3 gallons, 1 gallon almost. 1 extra gallon of milk has to be produced. So now you have to look at, how do I do this? Okay, let us go to Dairy Technology College. Let us study how to do this. How do we give various kinds of yatanas to cows so that, and kill them when they are still young, when their productivity is maximum. Get more young cows and find out how to get maximum milk from these cows. Assimilate all of them. Put them in large factories. This is how GDP grows. This is our GDP growth engine. Previously, if somebody is giving milk, somebody else is growing cotton. You get some cotton, you spin some yarn, make some clothes. But now, that is not enough. You dig the earth, get some petroleum, put it in massive factory, distill the petroleum, get one essence called plastics, and then have many more factories that combine various plastics to get yarn, rayon, nylon, polyester, and then mass produce using factory workers, and pay them very little, exploit them, take away their cows, take away their land, take away any essence of natural dependency that they would have, and give them some paper, and say, this is money. With this money, you can get one little bit of food. Just not enough for them to be happy. This is factory. These are the mills. And our economy is dependent on this. The more you grow this, it is considered advanced nation. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts. Contrast that with Prabhupada's explanation of the Vedic vision. This is not Prabhupada's creation. He is not creating this. He is explaining to us in English, so we may understand the Vedic version of how a society should be run and how Dwarakapuri was situated. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization. and they cause the destruction of noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although a few only can live lavishly by exploitation. Then he goes on, the natural gifts such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls are supplied by the order of the Supreme, and as he desires, material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. That is the catch. We are allowed to enjoy these natural gifts by the arrangement of the Lord. We are allowed. Mango tree is there, you can take as many mangoes as you can eat, no problem. But if you say that this mango tree shall not exist here because I want my own house here, big house, not small house, big house, all mango trees should be cut. So one person can live like this. This is exploitation. Or that, like the gold rush that happened in Arizona and California, that as soon as gold is found, immediately you want to cut down the whole mountain. Mountains are cut down so that gold may be mined. So when we exploit the resources of nature, then they get very rapidly depleted. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? Prabhupada is thundering here. A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills and jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? These natural gifts are available for everybody. Everyone can have a small hermitage, like in Dwarakapuri, with Krishna at the center. Have a cow, have 1 acre of land. There is sufficient land on planet Earth for this. Sufficient grains for everyone. But our modern civilization is described by Prabhupada as godless civilization because it is looking to exploit these resources for the benefit of a very few handful of people. But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. So here also there is a mention of perfection of human life. And today's verse, the purport starts with, perfection of human life is achieved by utilizing the nature's gifts in their own way. And here, perfection of human life by devotional service. What does it mean? Devotional service is best practice when we use nature's gifts in their own way. If A equal to B, B equal to C, then what happens? A equal to C. So perfection of human life is possible by devotional service. Perfection of human life is possible by utilizing nature's gifts in their own way. It means they're all linked. If we want a society where the society understands the dangers of the current path and wants to get back to the path of utilizing nature's gifts in their own way, it is only possible through devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity be maintained by His grace. Unless we have the Lord's grace, nature's gifts and natural prosperity will not be there. If you want to use nature's gifts in their own way, you can start with using whatever is available. But to make sure that there is abundance for everyone, it is only through devotional service that even nature's gifts are given. There is a verse in Bhagavatam where Prithu Maharaj is being received. Similarly, just as Krishna is entering Dwaraka, there was a time when Prithu Maharaj was also received by the subjects of his kingdom. And this verse says, Maitreya Uvacha, Muktikai Kusuma Shragbhir Dukulai Swarna Toranai Mahasurabhir Surabhir Dupair Manditam Tatra Tatravai. How did today, if let's say somebody comes, some VIP comes, how do people receive them? They'll put some big hoarding and they'll clear out all the lanes. They'll make sure there'll be a massive convoy of cars. All big vehicles will be there blocking the whole way, and everyone is shut down. And the roads may be asphalted, tar roads. All the slums on the way will be removed. And they will be all standing in the cold somewhere. Go away somewhere, don't be here. Prime Minister is coming. And this has happened actually. There was whenever foreign dignitaries used to visit India previously, for example, Bill Clinton or anybody like that, they used to look at the path because these visiting people would want to tour the city. But Indian leaders, they will not want to show too much slum, right? So all those huts, hutments, etc. would be cleared. Nobody knows where they would live. And all of that, that is how they were received. Now see how in Vedic times, how leaders were received. The great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when king entered his city, it was very beautifully decorated to receive him with pearls, flower garlands, beautiful cloth, golden gates, and the entire city was perfumed with highly fragrant incense. All natural gifts, everything available by nature. And Prabhupada says in the purport, real opulence is supplied by natural gifts such as gold, silver, pearls, valuable stones, fresh flowers, trees, and silken cloth. Thus, the Vedic civilization recommends opulence and decoration with these natural gifts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Where are these natural gifts coming from? Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such opulence immediately changes the condition of the mind, and the entire atmosphere becomes spiritualized. Even material gifts, even material natural substances, you can spiritualize the atmosphere. King Prithu's capital was decorated with such highly opulent decorations. And Prabhupada, in a lecture, he talks about what we consider as opulence today, just in ordinary life. Forget GDP. The GDP is the nation's opulence. But in personal life, if people want to show that I'm opulent, what is the kind of dinner plates that people have? China, expensive Chinaware. What is Chinaware? Basically clay. It is mud, correct? But that mud, it has got no value. It is not opulence. It is just mud. It is made of mud. It's a mud pot. Formerly, mud pots were used by people with very limited means. It is not a sign of opulence. But today, because of the way we have overexploited nature in a godless civilization, plastic plates and clay plates are considered opulence. And people don't even want to have metal plates anymore. Metal is coming naturally in the nature. Metal comes naturally. And if you buy, for example, silver plates, formerly people had silver plates for eating. How many of us can say that we have silver plates at home for eating? America is a very rich country. We all come here for, after all, material growth. And when we come to America, they'll say, "Arey, mera beta to uska to beda par ho gaya, America chala gaya." We all come to America, an opulent land. How many of us can say we are eating in silver plates, gold plates? Prabhupada says formerly, if there is some difficulty, you've got a lot of silver plates, silver utensils, or even brass, or even copper. In times of need, these can be sold for real value. But what we are using, plastic plates, paper plates, clay plates, they have no value. There's no value at all in that. So in Vedic times, opulence was there even then. But the atmosphere is spiritualized by defining the opulence in terms of natural gifts given by Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by using the natural gifts of the Lord, the atmosphere became spiritualized. And then there is another verse where Bhuma Devi is speaking to Prithu Maharaj. And she says, Pura srishta hi oshadhayo brahmana ya vishampate bhujyamana maya drishta ashadbhir adhrita vritaihi. So she is complaining, and this is when Prithu Maharaj had become angry at Bhuma Devi, at earth. Why you are not producing sufficient grains? What is happening here? And then Bhuma Devi comes in and explains, my dear king, the seeds, roots, herbs and grains which were created by Lord Brahma in the past are now being used by non-devotees who are devoid of all spiritual understanding. So this becomes a burden to Bhuma Devi. When the herbs and grains which are created by Lord Brahma in the past are being now used by non-devotees and who are devoid of spiritual understanding. If you see here the non-devotees, I'll come to that. So Prabhupada is saying in the purport, Lord Brahma created this material world for the use of the living entities. But it was created according to a plan. What is that plan? All living entities who might come into it to dominate it for sense gratification, because that's why all living entities come here, is to dominate. They would be given directions by Lord Brahma in the Vedas in order that they might ultimately leave it and return home back to Godhead. So this material world has been created with a purpose. The purpose is we who are all contaminated by this desire to lord it over everything that we see, with a propensity to become Krishna, that we may get cured of this material disease and we may go back home, back to Godhead. So this material world has been created with such a plan. All necessities grown on earth, namely fruits, flowers, trees, grains, animals, and animal byproducts, were created for use in sacrifice for satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of God, Vishnu, Godhead. So, whatever we see around us, the natural gifts of the Lord, they have been given to us. But with what purpose? They have been given to us for use, yes, but how? They have to be first offered in sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. When we give it first in sacrifice to the Lord, that becomes spiritualized. And then when we use that for our opulence and our use, the entire atmosphere becomes spiritualized. That is how, in Prithu Maharaj's time, all those gifts were being used. Prithu Maharaj himself is the incarnation of the Lord, and therefore in using it for satisfaction of Prithu Maharaj, it is automatically becomes spiritualized. But in general also, the Vedic culture is that all nature's gifts are first used, offered in sacrifice to the Lord, and then consumed. And in that way, the atmosphere becomes spiritualized. Although there are immense potencies within the earth for the production of grains, fruits, and flowers, this production is checked by the earth itself when it is misused by non-devotees who have no spiritual goals. So is there any surprise that there is scarcity now? Because we are using, the entire natural resources are being used by non-devotees who have no spiritual goals. Everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and everything can be used for His satisfaction. Things should not be used for the sense gratification of the living entities. This is the whole plan of material nature according to the directions of this material nature. So the plan of material nature according to the direction of this material nature. So in this verse, there was a mention of Adhritavata, Adhrita Vratraihi. Bhuma Devi is speaking of all the seeds and grains being used by non-devotees. And what is the word she uses for that? Adhrita vritaihi, means non-devotee. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that in contrast to that, a devotee is called dhrita vrata. Dhrita vrata means devotee. And adhrita vritaihi, that is referring to non-devotees. And they are also called griha vrata. Dhrita vrata is a devotee who is determined to advance in Krishna consciousness, and griha vrata is a non-devotee who is determined to pursue sense gratification. Both have got vrata. Both have got determination. If you take away even slightest amount of comfort from a householder, it becomes very disturbed. Say, no, I will get it back at any cost. You are taking away some possession of mine. How can you do that? I will get it back. I will work hard for the betterment of my family. I will uplift them, and you'll see how in 3 years, 4 years, I'll come back with force. This is also vrata. This is also determination. We all have that determination to reclaim what is rightfully ours for sense gratification. But does it help us in the long run? No, because it is graha vrata. That graha vrata does not help us, and that leads to exploitative nature, which allows us to participate very happily in the civilization where factories and mills and GDP is the basis of advancement. Contrast to that, dhrita vrata is a devotee who is equally determined, but equally determined to please the Lord. The whole Vedic plan is that misguided conditioned souls who have come to lord it over material nature should be trained to become dhrita vrata. So our process of Krishna consciousness is how to transform all of us from griha vrata to dhrita vrata. This dhrita vrata is mentioned in Bhagavatam in another verse where the wives of Kaliya, serpent Kaliya, are praying to the Lord that how is it possible that our husband Kaliya, venomous snake, what kind of austerities he must have performed, that your lotus feet were stamped on his head. And for that lotus feet, Lakshmi Devi is performing very severe austerities to obtain the mercy of the Lord's lotus feet. But our husband has got it. What good fortune he has got. And in that verse, Lakshmi Devi's austerities are referred to as dhrita vrata. Dhrita vrata is extreme austerities. And with determination to please the Lord. And another very similar word with very similar connotations is also dhrida vrata. Dhrida vrata is also used in Bhagavad Gita. But we'll just read this purport of this verse. This means that they should take a vow to satisfy their senses or enjoy life only by satisfying the senses of Supreme Lord. Activities intended to satisfy the senses of the Lord are called Krishnarthe Akila Cheshtaha. This indicates that one can attempt all kinds of work, but one should do so to satisfy Krishna. This is described in Bhagavad Gita as Yajñarthat Karma. The word Yajna indicates Lord Vishnu. We should work only for his satisfaction. So this Bhagavad Gita verse where Dhrida Vrata has been used is this. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha Dhrida Vrataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So Dhrida Vrata means worshipping with great determination the Supreme Lord. And that is the training that we are going through. Currently we are in a Graha Vrata stage. And this training of Krishna consciousness that we are going through is to come to the Dhrida Vrata stage or Dhrita Vrata stage. But our faith is still in exploiting the resources of nature. And we think that these resources are unlimited. Whereas actually the mercy of the Lord is unlimited. Natural resources are limited. In fact, there are two scientists, acclaimed scientists in the 20th century who studied this with very contrasting results. But both of them had this underlying conclusion that natural gifts, natural resources are highly constrained. And they had very different dimensions of study of what happens when a group of people tries to use a shared resource. The first scientist is the name Garrett Hardin. So we'll just briefly look at these two scientists, with that we'll close the class. Garrett Hardin. Garrett Hardin was an ecologist and a microbiologist. He studied the different ecosystems and how those ecosystems were habitated and exploited by the living beings in that ecosystem. At first, he studied animals and different species, trees, animals, and how they share natural resources. And then later on, he studied human beings also. And he saw a great parallel between them. And he saw that human beings have and any species, if you have an ecology and there are different species competing for the same exact resources, and one of them has a slight advantage, over time that will completely take over and dominate that area. All other species will be pushed out, completely made extinct. And the similar concept he saw in human beings, and then he formed this law of human ecology. It is called Garrett Hardin's first law of human ecology. And it is also called the tragedy of commons. Tragedy of commons. It is a very, if you can search it, tragedy of commons, you'll find a lot of writing on that. He says, therein lies the tragedy. Each man is locked into a system that compels him to increase his herd without limit. So he's talking about an example of a herd where there is a pasturing ground and everybody has some cows. And now the common pasturing grounds, the cows are going there for pasturing. So each person thinks, my cow should get maximum number of amount of grass, so that my cows give most milk. And then he says, all right, then today I have got 1 cow and there is so much of pasture. Let me increase, let me get 5 cows. Then all this pasture anyway is free, anyway is common to everybody. Let me get maximum milk production. Then I'll sell that milk, I'll get 10 more cows. Like this. So this is a thinking of a private profit. When every person is thinking in self-interest, so this is a scientist studying like this. People are acting like this. This is his theory. Each man is locked and increases herd without limit. In a world that is limited, but the pasturing ground is limited. If every person is trying to maximize and steal from that ground, thinking that it's unlimited, what happens? We can never do merely one thing. Any intrusion into nature has numerous effects, many of which are unpredictable. So he has studied that people are thinking that is unlimited, but actually it is limited. So now what happens? You are having overgrazing and there is not sufficient grass, and then there is famine, and now you have got all these cows, you don't know where to feed them. Now you have to artificially grow grass or some other product, and you have unintended consequences because the grass has dried up, there is flooding because there is no grass, the water is flowing, taking away the topsoil, the soil is lost. Now in that place where grass was growing, even nothing can grow now. So you are thinking that I am just trying to maximize my profit, but what is ending up happening? The entire ecology is destroyed. So this is his finding. And of course, he proposed some solutions which people did not accept. It was quite, but a lot of government, politicians, etc., they took it seriously. But it was also controversial. He proposed that there should be strong regulation. Oh, you shall not have more than this much resource, etc. And there are many other things that he proposed. Limits on number of children, which nobody accepted. But the fact is that it was very widely understood that yes, there are limits on our ecology. And then they contrast that with another scientist who also found that there are limits on ecology. Her name is Elinor Ostrom. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics in the year 2009. Just recent, not too, of course, before some of you were born. But for many of us, it is very recent. The recency is a factor of when you were born. Anyone who was born in 2010, they will think 2009 is so old. It is like grandparents' time. But for many of us, it is not like this. Very, very recent. So she was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in economics. And her contention, she also studied people on how natural resources are shared. But she found that actually if you don't put too many rules and regulations, and you leave a group of people to share a natural resource, the natural tendency of those people, if there is no external influence, the natural tendency of the people is actually to respect that natural, is the shared resource. Actually, people have a tendency to respect. They self-govern, they self-organize. And they use only what is needed in such a way that the resource does not get depleted. The tragedy in such situations is not inevitable, according to her. Instead, if the herders decide to cooperate with one another, monitoring each other's use of the land and enforcing rules for managing it, they can avoid the tragedy. But if you are allowing the GDP growth to be measured, advancement of an economy to be measured by GDP, and that becomes a barometer, and each person is brainwashed into believing that their own advancement in personal life, it means unlimited expansion of their wealth, then they're all brainwashed into thinking that I should exploit this natural resource. The more I exploit it, the more I'm respected in the society. If this is the intent, or this is the societal norm, then naturally there is exploitation. But that is not how human beings, if we are left to our natural means, are naturally not like that. It's artificial imposition upon us. That is why Srila Prabhupada says that the natural constitutional position of the spirit soul is to be the servant of the Lord. Human beings in their natural state actually recognize natural constraints. But through an artificial imposition of an imaginary economic prosperity brought about by unlimited exploitation of nature, we have lost that. It has been forcibly taken away from us through the system of governance that we have today. We can do something about it. We can do something about it. And what is recommended by Srila Prabhupada? The recommendation here is that we need to get trained from going from Grahavrata to Dhridavrata, where we understand that this artificial imposition can be removed by the process of Krishna consciousness, which Prabhupada in other places calls spiritual communism also, where we recognize that all the gifts of nature are to be used in their own way. And what is that their own way? It is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of God, Vishnu. Yajnarthat karmano anyatra. It is meant for satisfaction of the Lord. And when we then utilize that asset as much to the degree that we require, then that is the own way in which the natural gifts are utilized. And in this way, our lives and the entire atmosphere can become spiritualized. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions, comments. Can you please repeat that verse? I am not familiar with that verse. And what does it mean? And you're asking if that is the same as Dhridavrata. Yudhishthir Maharaj, certainly Dhridavrata. Yudhishthir Maharaj, although we didn't talk about that in the class, but Yudhishthir Maharaj is a very exalted person, and in Bhagavatam, he is being glorified in many different ways. One way that where it is mentioned is that whereas the Supreme Lord appeared in front of Prahalad Maharaj, right? Once, when he came to kill Hiranyakashipu. Similarly, the Lord appears in many places. He appeared once in front of Dhruva Maharaj. He was a small boy. He went to do penances. And the Lord appeared in front of Dhruva Maharaj. But with the Pandavas, he actually lived with them. So many years, their entire childhood, the Lord lived with them and played with them. How great is the Yudhishthira Maharaj then? How great are the Pandavas? That the Lord came personally to stay, live with them and play with them. They're all pure devotees, and certainly Dridhavrata. But this is meant as an instruction to us of how to, what are the qualities of pure devotee? What do they do? Dridhavrata means what does he do? Because people can think Dridhavrata is just they may think Sanskrit, or Dridhavrata, strong determination. Oh, strong determination. I have strong determination. I want to sleep till 7 o'clock every day morning. Strong. You try waking me up. I won't wake up. So it's very easy for us to fall into the trap of having our own interpretation of these words. So Dridhavrata is therefore given in 9.14, the verse that actually we talked about today. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataha. That is dridhavrataha. So always glorifying the Lord, and namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate, always worshipping the Lord. So that is the definition of dridhavrata. Certainly all pure devotees are dridhavrata. But all of us can be trained. That is why the sadhana bhakti is the process of training to become like that. Not that, oh, that person is like that, that is not, I cannot aspire. Of course, we cannot imitate like that. But by following the instructions that have been given to us by Srila Prabhupada and the organization that he created, it is possible for us to reach that position. There are no other questions, we'll stop here. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Thai Gaur Prema.